Another tutorial on designing graphic user interfaces using Tkinter in Python. If you've not watched my last video, go in the description below. Now, if you already have Python installed in your machine, there's nothing else to install because Tkinter comes with Python. The graphic user interface we're going to design is this one right here. It's just a simple student's record database. For example, if you put the student's name, for example, Andy, you put his student ID, and then you put his score. And then you click the submit button. Then the records will be submitted into the database. When you click show records, everything will be shown down there. And if you want to delete a record, all you have to do is put the student ID over there. And then you click delete, and then it will be deleted. And if you want to update a record, you have to first put the update or ID, which is this one right here, which is 1 for Andy. This is generated automatically by the database. And then you can put the other the update name, the update student ID, and then the update score, and then click save, and everything will be saved into the database. For example, 1 for Andy, and then we want his name to stay the same. His student ID to also be the same. And then we think he did not get 99, he actually got 95. So we give 95 and save, show records, and you see it's been changed. Now that we know what we want to do, let's go ahead and do it. Right here I have the basic Tkinter code, which is we're just importing Tkinter. You do this by saying from Tkinter import everything. And down here I'm gonna make a variable, let's call it root, is equal to tk with the brackets. Tk is short for Tkinter. And this is just gonna open up a graphic user interface window. Now we need to give this window a title, and we do this by saying root.title, and then in the brackets you put the name. Let's call this one students records. And then down here, for this to actually work, we need to add the root to the main loop, and we do this by saying root.mainLoop. And that's it, and let's run it, see, and this GUI window pops up. Now there's nothing inside, so let's go and put some things inside. I'm just gonna create some more space in between here. First, we start off by writing a comment about what you're going to do. And here we are saying we want to create the input labels. Input labels. These are the labels that we are going to use to input our student name, ID, and score. Let's call this name label, and it should be equal to a label widget. Wrong spelling. It should be label, like that. And this label widget, all it does is that it puts a label on the screen. And now we want to put the label of the input field for the student's name. Inside the brackets, we need to specify where this label is going to be, and we want it to be in root. And the text of this label is going to say name. Now if we run this, there's nothing inside. That's because we have not put the label in the grid yet. And we do this by saying name label, wrong spelling on top there, dot grid, and in the brackets we put the row number and the column number. We want this to be in row number 0 and column number 0. And if we run this, and there it pops up, our name label in the top left corner. It's in column 0 and row 0. Just think of a grid system as a system of rows and columns. The next thing we want to do is put the entry field for the name, and we do this by saying name entry is equal to the entry widget. And what this entry widget does is that it puts an entry field in the graphic user interface. We want this entry field to be in the root, and we want its width to be, let's say, 30. And then we have to put this entry field in the grid system as well, and we do this by saying name entry.grid. We want this to be in front of the name label, so it's going to be in row, the same row, row 0, and column 1. And if we run it, and there we have it, our name label and its entry field. Now there is need for a space there, so let's go and make it more good looking. We can do this by giving this name label a padding in the X direction. Just right here we say pad X is equal to, let's give it a padding of 10. Now if you run it again, and there we have it. Now it's more good looking. Now to make the labels and the entry field for the student ID and the score, all I have to do is copy these ones here and paste them down below. Paste them one more time. Let's put some space there and there. Now let's change the name of this label to student ID label, and we want the text to say student ID. And we change it down here as well, student ID label. Dot grid. In the grid we want it to be just below the name, so it's going to be in row number 1, and in the same column, column 0. Now we have to change the entry as well. We say student ID entry, and we have to put in the grid as well. We say student ID entry dot grid. Student ID entry dot grid, and we want it to be in front of the student ID. So we say row 1, column 1. And we want to change this one too. Let's call it score label, and we want the text to say score. And let's put this in the grid, score label dot grid. We want it to be below that student ID, so it's going to be in row 2 and column 0. And the entry field, score entry, and we want to put in the grid as well, score entry dot grid, and we want it to be in front of the score label, so it's going to be in the same row, row number 2 and column number 1. And, now if we run this, there we have them, our labels and their entry fields. Now the next thing we are going to do is create the submit label down here, submit button I mean. So down here we can say, write a comment and say create the submit button. And we do this by saying submit btn. I'm just calling it btn, you can call it whatever you want, is equal to a button widget, and we want this button to be in the root, and we want the text to say submit. Text is equal to submit.